Hi everyone. On the topic of inclusiveness, I would prefer a Creative Nights kind of series, but here I am. I'm Dave. I'm not a morning person. So I got asked to talk about inclusiveness, and I started by asking, how do I fit into this? And I thought I'd share the story of how I founded Limbr and the Decelerator to show how inclusive entrepreneurship can be if we support people's mental health along the journey. So this was my old life, forcing myself to be a morning person due to being an insecure overachiever, due to being, I think, a second-generation immigrant. And this experience of being a second-generation immigrant, my parents were born in Vietnam, I was born in New Zealand. It displays itself really clearly when you go into a supermarket and your mum tries to barter with the checkout people. There's worlds colliding there, and so the experience around, I guess, feeling included as a kid was very much learning how to navigate these two different worlds. And my kind of approach to this was really, you know, you get humiliated as a kid, right? When you're different, it's embarrassing. You can go one of many ways. I think the way that I went was to just try and talk my way into feeling included in different groups. So this show has a scene that just really kind of crystallized that for me. And it was essentially me telling my mum that I needed sandwiches to get a seat at the table with the cool kids or the white kids or whoever they were, but just making other people feel comfortable, I guess, was an early experience of mine, and I think many other second-generation immigrants. So I guess I got into a relationship with my parents where I was really trying to convince them of my world and make it fit with their world. But really, where it really kind of ran into a wall, or more accurately, a bamboo ceiling, was around what I was going to do for work. And I was given 3 clear options and nothing else, essentially. And this was literally the order of my preferences in year 12. And yeah, I went to an interview for medicine and it sounded really intense. So I ended up choosing law and commerce as my degree, just kind of hedge my bets, I guess. And I did everything I was supposed to do on paper. I was very lucky that, you know, academically, things weren't challenging for me to pick up, so I could, on paper, do what my parents wanted me to do. But it wasn't for me. I did the enter-score thing and the university thing, and then I'm a recovering corporate lawyer now, I like to say. And while I was working in this big corporate law firm, this was my world of entrepreneurship. You know, this new emerging kind of, I guess you could call them like icon, these mythological creatures that were, you know, too smart for school. And there's the whole mythology of like the college dropout entrepreneur, the whole, you know, self-made, but really it's, you come from an elite place of privilege that typically, you know, these rich, white, but increasingly Asian dudes. And that was important to me because I hadn't, and this isn't something I really realized until recently, that I haven't seen me in so many fields. And that like 3 options, business, law, or medicine, is because like that's self-reinforcing. Like if I was to go and become a doctor and then maybe I'd get a cameo role in a, you know, Australian sitcom or something as a doctor, then the next generation, you know, it just keeps continuing. And so that was something that upon reflection was a big part of my inclusiveness to entrepreneurship. And in my eyes, it was this weird nebulous concept of success, right? But my parents, you know, they were refugees, and to them entrepreneurship was like the last option. It was the most unstable, it was the most risky, and it was not what they had gone through, everything they had gone through, for me to then go through. And so in their eyes, it was the opposite of success. But I didn't listen to them. I quit my job and I started a startup, and they hated it. Like, this was very challenging for them, for me, obviously. But it was until, we had some success. We fluked our way in our very first startup. It was me and my co-founder. We were 25 at the time. And we found ourselves in this very, social network type scene where we had, I guess, multiple investors kind of offering, obscene amounts of money. And we ended up, partnering with some investors that we're really excited about, and we're on our way. This was the experience, and mostly internally, because a big part of convincing mum and dad, but more so myself, that this was a decision that was worth making, it meant I couldn't be vulnerable about screwing up, about not knowing what I was doing, essentially, which was the whole experience, was just not knowing what I was doing, but just lying and just be like, yeah, I've got this. And then you keep all those, excuse my language, but the oh fuck moments to yourself. Fortunately, and this is the one thing I would urge anyone who goes into business to do, is to have a co-founder, have a partner that you can bounce these moments off, because otherwise you don't know what's going on. And this was the intensity of the experience. Unbeknownst to me, sorry to make a Game of Thrones reference, but I was dealing with someone who was like a political mastermind, like 4D chess, like 10 moves ahead of me, and I didn't even know I was playing. And it's because I was being gaslit. And to anyone who's been through this experience, it's nuts. You don't know what is real anymore. And a big part of this experience's lessons, I guess, were knowing what to kind of listen to. And it's when things start to get really jumbled, when you have an investor who is, all intents and purposes backing you to succeed, telling you you're not good enough to run the company, that there's been issues with customers, that your co-founder maybe doesn't trust you, or, these types of things, like, you take on face value. And when you start to question them, I think it's easier to just start to question yourself. So this experience was intensely lonely and scary, but this was my approach to it. Don't show any of it, right? Just everything's on fire, and just look around and sip your coffee and say, this is fine. Because, that was kind of part of the story I'd got myself into. Everything is fine, even when it's not. And that means that, especially when it's not, you don't know. You don't have the support systems in place to cope, to understand what's happening, to bounce back. So I asked, I looked around, and I was dealing with powerful, wealthy people. And often the advice I got was to trust the powerful, wealthy people. Maybe I should step down, maybe I should fire my co-founder, do all these crazy things that didn't make any sense in my world, but increasingly I didn't know what my world was. So I kind of just broke down and was just really vulnerable about the whole thing. And that's when something kind of unlocked. And any people that had previously told me, no, you're not going crazy, but you should trust the investors, were now saying, no, okay, I've had that experience too. I've doubted myself in that way. That didn't serve me. And then we start to talk, and all of a sudden, the whole weight of the world is lifted off your shoulders. And that was really why I started Limbr, because me having to do that shouldn't have been that difficult. There were so many people that I'd spoken to, pretty much every entrepreneur that had run their own business in any kind of form had this crazy kind of gaslighting experience of just doubting themselves, just not knowing who they really were. And it really just took this domino effect of vulnerability to get us to support each other and just be a bit real. look, the experience with Limbr has been exactly the same. It's been, this is the experience of trying to create something that doesn't right now exist. It's not easy, it's not straightforward, it's not stable, but the key difference this time is I've had support the entire way, and I've been able to say when I've been thinking, oh fuck. And that's really just kind of nipped it in the bud to, allow you to make the right decisions and be true to yourself. And so this is where I'm going to talk about Limbr, and there's a bit of a content warning here. This is all about mental health. There's mentions of suicide here, so I hope if anyone is upset or triggered by that, hopefully this is enough warning. So we're in a mental health epidemic. This is pretty big news. It's been around for a while now. In 2016, the World Health Organization declared mental illness as the #1 burden of disease, depression alone, in fact. And that was a projection they had for 2020, so it's not trending well. It's getting worse, and the ABS most recent survey in 2015 shows that nearly half of us will experience some sort of mental ill health in our lives. But more alarmingly, and the thing that kind of most sparked an idea for me in Limbr was this treatment gap, essentially that 2 out of 3 people who experience mental ill health don't seek help. What is help, right? What is available? Why aren't people seeking this? This is what I was trying to understand with Limbr and what turned into a big kind of research and now development project. This is what's available below what they call help, treatment, right? The subclinical threshold, AKA life. It's training, and this concept of mental training is a really important one because physical training was not a thing 80 years ago. Like, the only people that lifted weights were like the people with handlebar mustaches in those suspender things that would impress people at shows with these incredible feats of physical strength. That was novel and freakish back then. This is very similar to mental training, and this is something that I would really like to instill in this crowd. Is mental training is something that is new to this generation, I guess, and it's something that is kind of fully up to us, and these are the things where we have lots of tools available. So it's a very individual pursuit around training. You can do things collectively, of course, with meditation studios and things like that. But training is this great kind of preventative approach to us that's subclinical. Then you've got support, right? There's counselors, there's hotlines, there's family and friends, and there's peer support. I can only speak for myself and my experience. I was never taught how to ask for help. I was never taught how to ask for support. I was never taught how to be vulnerable in a way that lets people in. So this whole section of training and support, it's all not really formalized. It's not considered help, right? But this is the thing that prevents kind of issues, and it can just help us really maintain in tough times. This is what the sector calls help. It's clinical treatment, and it's this 35% sector at the top that 2/3 of people aren't accessing. And it's visit your GP, get a prescription from them, typically, or they'll give you a referral for a Medicare mental health plan. A lot of people have to go again because they don't realize you need to have a therapist in that consultation for the GP to give you the mental health plan. And anything more than that, it's really on you, and it requires time, it requires money, and it requires a lot of resilience to this whole sector's approach to being diagnosed and treated. So, look, we know that sector, there's a lot of problems there, but that's kind of above our pay grade right now. What we think we can have the most impact on is on the subclinical, is on the peer support section, on the training section of help. And that's what Limbr does. It does training and support. So we offer training to create wellbeing policies for workplaces. And we do it with the workplace's people. So we appoint kind of champions who are just great listeners, people who are good at understanding what people are going through. And then we do something called the decelerator. And this is kind of what I'm really here to talk about. So this is our kind of evidence-based peer support service that's specifically designed for entrepreneurs to learn about well-being and mental health and to connect with others, their peers, around those topics that they might be struggling with, like, say, negotiation or hiring and firing, perfectionism, much more. Here's how it works. So number one, it's topics-based. And having a topic helps the people in the room all know they've got something in common. You know, we're all here to talk about this topic. We've all been through it in some way. It also lets us deliver kind of evidence and theory on the topic, which kind of changes the pace of the session really nicely. And it's also a nice kind of sideways entrance into talking about vulnerable stuff. It's a lot easier to talk about, I don't know, for instance, the insecurity of negotiating a salary, right? Rather than just your insecurities about, you know, how much value you have. And this kind of gives us some talking points to actually go quite deep. And if the group comes along for the ride, then yeah, like I've been in these sessions before. It's really rewarding. There's a little bit of magic in the room where people feel really connected about something. The second part is vibe. We couldn't think of a better word for this. The key thing that we're looking to create in these groups is psychological safety. So creating options for your vibe helps us keep things diverse without breaking down cohesion or eroding safety. So really it's all about how different people connect and learn in different ways. And the third part is to show up, to learn. That photo has no relation to this. I just really like that photo. But yeah, you show up, you learn, and you connect, and you grow. And that's big, right? Like showing up is big. So this is where there's a bit of a demarcation between what Limbr does and what the decelerator does. And Limbr is all about trying to make it easier for you to show up. The decelerator is a thing for you to show up to. To summarize, sorry, I'm kind of writing this talk as I'm reading it right now, so excuse my kind of lack of preparation, but I think what I'm trying to say is entrepreneurship is about taking risks, but like who you are, where you start in life, what privilege you've been given very much dictates how inclusive it is. I talked before about how I felt included because all of a sudden I was seeing versions of myself doing a thing that I hadn't done before. And that definitely had a toll on my mental health, I think, down the track as well, in a way that maybe it wouldn't with someone else. But really, it's just about how much we can support many different people's journey along entrepreneurship by supporting their mental health. We increasingly believe that social entrepreneurship in particular, and just creativity and innovation in general, is vital. Like we live in evolutionary times, crazy times, and people trying to solve problems, people trying to create things that don't exist yet to bring well-being or value into the world, that's so vital right now. And we really believe in making it a super inclusive endeavor by supporting entrepreneurs' mental health. I think that's it. Thank you.